What kind of questions are you getting? Do you get the same questions over and over? Is there like sort of a theme wondering about? I've got a few that I just addressed on my Facebook Live for public um, that I hear kind of over and over again and seem to be the things that are most on people's minds. Now, obviously, we get a lot of questions about interest rates because it's a big topic of conversation. But that's not one, first of all, not my lane, right? So I can answer that from 35,000 feet or whatever. Hey, sorry about that. Technical glitch. So, not sure where I dropped out, but if you're like me, you get a lot of the same questions sort of at the same time. And so some of the questions that I was just answering on my Facebook Live to the public were the first one was about when the market starts. Now, if you're watching me across the country, your market might be very different from mine. But in Chicagoland, we have snow and we have cold in the winter. And those two things usually keep people in their house whenever possible. So people talk about the market starting after Super Bowl, which seems to be constantly changing. I don't know, I don't pay that much attention to it, but it seems to be. Um, and they talk about starting in March or starting mid February or starting after February 1st. There's lots of dates that people like to cite. And I've looked back at the data over and over again, as well as my own personal experience. And before I was a realtor, I still watched the market really closely. I was kind of a groupie. So many years of watching the advent of spring market. And I have to say that it is primarily based on the weather, not anything else. Um, so when it gets cold and snowy, typically we don't see and hear from people for a while. Um, and then as it gets a little later, they can't help it. So even if it's bad, sometimes it'll still break. But usually we have like one good weekend, and then everybody's like, "Hey, let's go buy a house." Um, we're getting a lot of calls, a lot of reach outs, really a lot of activity right now. So I think it's starting really early. I think we're going to have an early spring in this market, and things can always change, but that's what I'm seeing so far. So I'd be interested to hear how you judge the beginning of spring market where you are, and drop that in the comments. Also in Illinois, we are still like 60% down in inventory from 2019 levels, which were already really tight. So if a house comes on the market, spring market started. Um, we've had two close by that are under contract that came on the market over Christmas, which is really unusual. And actually, they didn't even hit the market. They were in the private network and both sold while they were in there. So um, that's pretty much where I see our spring market. Looks like it's going to be very robust with buyers, and hopefully we get some sellers stepping up and getting things moving. Um, the next question was, I don't know if you're hearing this, but I'm hearing it a lot. As a seller, how am I going to benefit from this Sitzer Burnett lawsuit? I haven't seen sellers benefit from it at all. In all cases, in every transaction I've had since August 17th, my buyer has requested the seller pay the buyer's brokerage. In every sale side, that buyer has requested that the seller pay the buyer's broker. And in every case, the seller has agreed. So I haven't seen a real impact on the pocketbook of sellers, and I didn't expect to. Buyers look at the total that they're spending. So if the seller refuses to pay their agent and the buyer has to, then the buyer is obviously going to reduce the price that they're willing to pay for the house. So that's what we've been seeing. Let me know if it's any different where you are, or just if your experience varies from mine. I'd be fascinated by that. And the third thing, what was the third thing I talked about? It was how to prepare the house for sale. So one of the things that I kind of hammer is that is dependent on so many things. I can't tell anybody that, if you replace your flooring, paint your cabinets, or strip your cabinets, or reface your cabinets, or put in new countertops, or finish your basement, or put in new windows, like any of those things, with the exception probably of the windows, unless they're awful. Most of those things, could be a great idea, or it could just be a big waste of money. I do think probably the one thing I tell everybody is to paint. It's pretty unusual that anybody doesn't need to paint unless they just did. And they shouldn't paint without, hiring us first to help them figure out how and what and where. And so I've had, I'm sure you have too, many, many sellers who have called me and said, I'm ready to list. And then I got there and they hadn't done the things that would have made so much difference. And they probably did a bunch of things that they didn't really need to do because they didn't call me. They were getting information from, HGTV or websites or somebody in California, somebody in a completely different market. So I hit again the wisdom in hiring an agent before you do anything else with buying or selling a house. I think, sadly, lots of people like to make that kind of the last thing they do, and they think that it keeps their options open. But what it does is it leaves them without a partner during that whole preparation stage. So I hate to see it, but I get it. People don't know. So I try to remind them of that as much as possible. And that's my Ask Me Anything. If you have any questions as an agent, drop them in the comments. I would love to answer them. And I do this segment every month. I'm Ruth Sheehan with the Ruth Sheehan team, and this is Putting the Real in Real Estate. Thanks for tuning in.